The Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Where'd the old town go? They moved it all north of here in the shopping mall.
He's back. Good morning. Welcome to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9. Or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553 and definitely call the law. Deb, tell us about this group we got with us. What's going on?
Help me.
At first I'll say John wrote our theme song called Old Town Cleveland.
That's right.
And tell us about that song just a little bit, John. It's about your family, right?
Yeah. I wrote that years ago, mostly about my brother Alan and myself, and you know what we would do around town. We'd head downtown on Saturday, and glad you asked that question, Ron.
Yeah,
go ahead and introduce this group.
I've already told Ron to behave this morning. We've got David and John Cook with us.
Started out not.
And we're going to be talking about local history. And in particular, these are the two go-to guys in the community that if you need to know something about the Civil War, this is who I call. And we're glad to have you guys with us today. Ron, we've got some activity going up on the Greenway this morning. And I'd just like to say that the Heart Walk, the American Heart Association Walk, has started. So be watching for those folks out on the street or getting ready. They're on the Greenway.
Well, don't run over them there. Yeah, that'd be nice.
I was going to be there this morning, but I'm here, so
that's right.
I won't be walking today.
And Ron and I went up this week to Inglewood and visited the Textile Museum. It's a little free museum up there in downtown Inglewood. Cute little country town. Be sure that you go up there and visit with them. And next Saturday on June the 28th, they're going to be doing Inglewood Celebrates, and it's downtown Inglewood. They're going to have the 3rd annual Sock Mill Motorcycle Run, and a lot of activities going on.
They're going to have
food. Basically from 7 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock, there's something going on all day long. There's a antique tractor and engine show and a motorcycle run and live entertainment in the shade, they say. And then that night at 7:30, there's an old-fashioned square dance on Main Street. And Sunday is a community-wide church service. So go up there and support those folks in Inglewood. It's only about a 40-minute drive from here.
They tried to hire that little Sunshine girl. What's her name?
Emmy Sunshine.
Emmy Sunshine in the Rain.
We got to see her live.
Did you?
And standing in the lobby of the East Tennessee Historical Museum, and her and her dad was the only two there playing. And she drew.
Talk about a career that's taken off. I mean, of course, she was doing well just by. I think one of her videos went viral. That's what they call it on YouTube.
The one at Sweetwater.
She's from Sweetwater. Next thing you know, she's on the Good Morning Show.
Someone sent me a link to her that, and I watched the video, and I started trying to track her down so that maybe we could get her come on the show. And at that point in time, they announced that she was going to be on the Today Show. So we thought we might need to just back down for a little while.
Since then, she's been on the at the Ryman. For Marty Stewart's Midnight Show, performed with him. I mean, she's got a booming voice for a 10-year-old.
She has a booming voice, and
I could be there if I was still small and cute.
When were you small?
I'm just talented. She's got that 10-year-old thing going.
And then anyone out there has a dobro they're wanting to sell, they need to call me because I'm going to learn how to play the dobro.
Oh Lord.
Yep. My next instrument I'm going to master.
So did you give up on the steel guitar?
I give up on the steel guitar.
That was painful.
and then the fiddle, that hurt. Oh,
I was sure the cat got its tail stuck in the door. When I
you
heard
sit
that
there,
story.
and the first off, they tell you that it's tuned just the opposite of what a guitar is. The strings go up the opposite way. So, if you're a guitar player, you sit there and go, wait a minute. And you have to turn your hands around. Then you have to rub that bow across those strings and make it sound like something. I've got a real admiration for fiddle players now. But I'm going to learn to play dobro. Then it'll be for sale in about a year.
You're just going to keep moving on to instruments until you
Find one I
learn
can
to play
play.
one
One I can play.
beside the bass. Now, you play. Why don't you just stick that you master the bass? So.
Well, like I say, you've got to move
Expand.
on. Yeah, you've got to expand. And I expanded my waistline
And there's
for a long time.
there's one corner left in our house for one more instrument.
Yeah.
I
at
want to
least.
start off today's show with David's story about how he discovered the Civil War at Blue Springs. That's one of my favorite stories, and I think it's probably been at least 3 years since he's told that on the air. So David, how did you find out
Your own, David.
your own?
Good morning, Cleveland. Back when I was in the 7th grade, I was at Blue Springs Elementary, which is, of course, no longer there. A tornado took care of that.
Oh, so sad to go down to there.
Yes. I was outside on the outside basketball court. That's when you played basketball outside because we didn't have an inside gym. And the ball went rolling down the hillside, and I chased after it, got it, and noticed something white chalky laying in the ground next to the ball, and I picked it up and took it with me, and really didn't know what it was at the time. Asked the history teacher, and the history teacher didn't really have a clue, so I proceeded to do my own research and proceeded to find out that it was a Civil War bullet, and asked some teachers at the school, and they were like, well, no, the Civil War didn't happen around here really. Closest it got was Chattanooga, Battle Above the Clouds. So from that point on, it just intrigued me, and here I am today, a little bit smarter.
Well, and know a little bit more too now.
Yeah,
I think I love how the
What-
teacher told you that the Civil War didn't happen here.
I think that. Yeah, a great history teacher there. Okay.
Yeah.
They got that one wrong. Yeah, and local history is usually the thing that a lot of people don't understand or don't know. They know because we teach Pearl Harbor and we teach World War II and who discovered America, but no one teaches Bradley County history as much.
No.
What troops camped there at Blue Springs?
The 4th Army Corps camped at Blue Springs, which encompassed tons of troops.
That's the
80
Union troops, right?
Yes, 86 Illinois, the 9th Indiana, which I was fortunate enough over my researching years to come across a sketch made by Captain Morgan, and it shows actually most of the camps in the Blue Springs area laid out. He sat on top of the hill across from Blue Springs Baptist Church and sketched a lot of the camps and how they were laid out and everything. So, yeah, the whole 4th Army Corps. And there's still to this day, there's trenches up on top of the hill that are still visible and quite well intact.
And very hard to get to.
Very hard to get to.
Yeah, you took me up there one day.
One time years ago, they proceeded to think at that time that this place, Cleveland, Bradley County, they were going to be quite a big battle, and because of its importance, because of the railroad and everything. So the 4th Army Corps wound up here and kind of dug in for the winter. And
What year was that?
1863, winter of 63-64. And so if you were fortunate enough over the years, and still even today, if you know the right places to look, you can go down there and still find a bullet or two.
Yeah, because they had one great thing about that winter camp was they got bored a lot. Sit there and just fire mini balls into the side of that ridge for target practice. So there's tons of them in there. You know, the stupidest thing we probably ever did, you talking about how hard it is to get up to the top.
Mm-hmm.
We actually took a little white pickup truck that I had and drove it up there. Almost come off the mountain several times, but there's like a little, what is it, a trail that goes up or an old
It was
wagon
actually
kinda-
an old fire break. We were
drove
navigating.
it up there. One wheel coming off the side of it, but actually, I think we made it all the way to the
Yeah,
top
we made
with it.
We made it.
I was driving, and David and somebody, maybe Uncle Jack, in the back bouncing up and down when it would start spinning.
Mm-hmm.
We never did that again.
I know when I went up there with you, we found bullets and you found some buttons in a hole over there. So now,
Oh, hey, let me tell you one of the most interesting, and just so we can clear this up at the start, I know enough about Civil War to be dangerous.
yes,
If you're calling in, David, your technical expert, so you can gear your questions to him. But up in a fire pit on top of that ridge,
mm-hmm.
you know, and everybody likes belt buckles and everybody likes Confederate pieces and coins and all that, but I think some of the greatest finds are these little obscure pieces, and there's a fire pit, particular fire pit up there, and he found a sword scabbard. That's the little, you know, your sheath was usually had a brass piece at the top, and then it was like cloth or
Leather.
leather, and then at the bottom there would be a scabbard tip. Some of them were really fancy, depending on if you had rank or not, or money, but usually a brass piece at the end just to keep the sword from sticking through. And apparently this piece had got a hole in it, and the point would stick through, so the guy crammed newspaper down in the scabbard to keep the sword from coming through. And the amazing thing is, after 140 some odd years, 150 years, you know, David pulls this piece up and actually fishes the paper out of it and comes out with a piece of paper. You know, it's got good holes and tears in it, but folds out to about a 4x6 piece, I guess, with enough of the writing and all intact that you could. There's a couple of ads for Hamilton County, for Chattanooga. I forget what all was on it. He's got it between glass now. See, that to me, that's better than he might disagree. That's better than a belt
what other
buckle.
troops? You know, not just Blue Springs, but they were troops on Michigan Avenue and all around. What other troops come in besides the Indiana 9th and what?
The 4th Michigan Cavalry.
And that's why it's called Michigan Avenue
Right.
Road.
Right.
It's an avenue and a road.
Right.
But the Michigan 4th, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay, and who else?
Well, I mean, there were a lot of Confederate troops around here, of course, too, in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, over close to where you and Debbie live, not far from your church, the Pleasant Grove Church. Now, I know that church goes way back.
Right.
That church was originally over where the Price Cemetery is at the theater.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And at one time it was used, of course, as an academy, as a lot of the, churches were back then. The schoolhouse had doubled. And there were several troops that had headquarters there, and they were moving back and forth from there to Candy's Creek. Bates, Brown, Johnson were all Confederate commanders that had troops with them, and they were going back and forth between there. Candy's Creek, actually, they talked about. And over the years, we found most of these spots. There's still one that's out there along Candy's Creek we haven't found yet, but some of them were talking about. We camped at the base of Candy's Ridge, south and east of the creek. Well, there's a clue. The only way you can be south and east of the creek at the same time, you're going to have a bend in the creek right there, and near Ross's Ford. Well, then throughout doing research and everything, and I had the fortunate to work with E.L. Ross for a while before he died, and he gave me some good information on the Ross's history on Candy's Creek, so that helped out a lot. Wheeler, a lot of people don't know, he was in Cleveland.
Yep.
Oh, really?
For a while, yeah. And he actually made a small raid down through Blue Springs once, and there was a small running skirmish battle there. It lasted a couple of hours, but no major battles in Bradley County. But to me, when you're talking 2,000 to 4,000 guys, that's a pretty good fight. And, and we had a few of those that took place.
Yeah, there's some out on Harrison Pike, I understand.
Yeah.
Where
Against the Harrison Pike was the
fitness
what you would
factory,
call
actually,
your-
where the fitness factory sits at right now.
Mm-hmm.
that'd be one of the
And,
more major skirmishes.
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
there, and then going out Michigan Avenue Road coming from Charleston, across the river, Colonel Eli Long. That was a pretty good cavalry and mounted infantry battle, about 1,500 guys on each side.
And then Sherman stayed up in Charleston. at
Yes,
the
he
Hendricker
stayed in
house?
Charleston, and he also camped on the Summerfield Johnston
Yeah,
farm.
down Tucker Springs.
That was probably one of the first big camps that I'd ever got into, and it was all because of just one small dispatch, and all it said was, "We will be camped tonight near a spot marked Tucker's on the Coast Survey map," and that's what most of the commanders used back then, were the Coast Survey maps. They were quite accurate. So I proceeded to do research and track down Tucker's, and I found some information about John Tucker, who came into Bradley County in the early 1800s, and I tracked down his place. And
At the time of the Civil War, and I know it's been a while since you've looked at all that, but were there any indications there was a mill there at Tucker's?
there actually were two mills
Okay.
on his farm, and I've got a map that shows them.
There was one there at the corner, what is now the intersection of Old Alabama Road and Old Chattanooga Pike.
Right.
Okay.
right.
I know
And-
that from the 1838, when Mr. Williams sold that property, 36, it may have been as early as 36, he sold that property to John Tucker.
Yeah.
There was a mill there, and possibly it was a toll bridge too. It was a mill and a toll bridge, and the stagecoach stop was in that area too.
Stop, yep.
Okay.
Back in the day, David and Uncle Jack's ones that actually got me interested and hooked for years there with metal detecting, and David and my Uncle Jack Sliger and myself were there to find that spot at Tucker Springs that David's talking about, which was exciting. You know, there was two Tucker Springs. You know, you got a Tucker Springs there where the old hotel,
Yes.
and then there's another Tucker Springs that's out on the farm, and we had looked and looked, and David would climb up and down those hills, and I think finally one day there was some old man that lives down there. He'd come out, walk around, want to know,
Yeah.
so what are you guys doing? And David said, well, we're looking for an old Civil War camp. Should be quite big, but it's at Tucker Springs. And he said, you looking at the wrong spring. He said, there's another spring. And he pointed out the other side of the tracks, and sure enough, you know, out
There
on
was
that
two,
farm,
yeah.
I think the spring's still there, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's covered
It's
now.
just covered up, capped over.
And I swear I don't know how long it was. It seemed like it's probably at least a couple times, maybe several times. We actually, when they figured out where we needed to go, we would pull our car up in there, and we're actually parking right on top of the camp, and we're getting out and walking off
Now, John
to
probably
look.
John's probably mad about that because you made him walk
Yeah.
so much.
You know, it was a drive-in camp. We would
Well,
drive up and get out, and I think Uncle Jack was probably.
Do you still have the?
He got out of the car one day and was tuning his machine and just said,
Do you still have the metal detecting video we did?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's on DVD now.
Yes.
I need to see
I'd like
that.
to have a copy.
I'd like to see that again.
I think David shows it occasionally at his club meetings for comic relief.
Yeah.
No, it is. It was pretty good. And John sitting up against the tree drinking a beer while everybody else is out metal detecting, eating M&Ms and drinking a beer. I think it was.
Well, see, I learned that from Uncle Jack. He taught me the real way to relic hunt. Uncle Jack would kind of just lay back, and if you got a signal and pulled something good up, and then you got a second one, then he would just come right in, and he would just
Now,
he'd run over you.
you took me upside that mountain. I did that with you, but down there in South Pittsburgh, near South Pittsburgh, where that railroad
Train
bridge
track.
White side.
goes across that ridge there,
Yeah, it's white side.
there's no way I'd walk
Sheriff
across
Gilly
Yeah.
and David
No.
and myself. Well, the first time I went across it, you know, my main panic was, you know, all right, what's the train schedule?
that.
David said, well, they come through here all the time. I said, that's not telling me a whole lot. Do they come in the morning? They come in the afternoon? Have you ever been on the trestle when one came?
And David
And-
lied to you.
Well, I don't remember if he lied to me or not, but
Not too
All I
bad.
know is this one particular day, a train did come, and if any of you've ever driven under that sucker, I mean, it's like a mile high.
It's about 120 feet up.
That's a
Yeah.
mile, isn't it? Yeah, that's a
for me
mile.
it would be.
And a train comes along.
Felt like at least 3 miles.
Train comes along, and you're a bigger guy, which I always have been. At that time, I could climb up a mountain. It's usually on my hands and knees, but I got there. You know, when I'm hugging that rail, that little cable on the side, and there's a train come by, you're just thinking, man, what if? You know, there's a board hanging out the side door of one or anything, at least 1.5 feet, 2 feet. It's going to clean you right off that trestle. But I remember that even spooked.
Well, no, I've had people say too that
That even spooked the sheriff when we got out there on that.
the wind will grab your clothes and pull it into the train and
So
many of-
how many trains?
David say, nah, you
So did
you
the train
hold on
come
to your
across?
belly.
Yeah, I've only been on it once when a train come across. David's been across that thing probably
Oh,
100
numerous
times or
times.
more, but I've been across it three times. Once with Jack and David, and then we took the sheriff down, I think, twice, and went up there. And
Y'all
It-
take
it's
pictures. I'm
interesting.
not going across the
Let
train
me-
tracks.
let me-
you know what's great is from the top of that ridge, you can look down at Nickajack and actually see the river. The water looks different. You can tell before they dammed that up and made the lake exactly where the river would run, and you can see exactly why they were up there. You know, watching that.
You could see
There
all that.
were
Yeah.
caves in that area too
Yep.
that are now underwater.
The folks, you're listening to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9. We're talking about the Civil War, about occupation here in Bradley County. We're going to talk about soldiers and maybe battles, and Deb will tell a little bit about stories of the people who left here. And our guest today is John Cook and his older brother David.
I owe you $5.
Yeah, that's $5, John. We're going to open the phones up here in just a minute. John, I know we worked on a book together called The History of the Rebellion of East Tennessee, written by J.S. Hurlburt, which may or may not have been a pen name, who was here with the Indiana 9th Regiment.
It actually was his name.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have, yes.
Oh yay!
I meant to tell y'all
I
about that.
have
but
looked
I
for
have
that man
actually-
for years.
I have found some records on him thanks to the internet, and it was the guy actually used his real pen name. He was thick-skinned. It's a wonder they didn't run him out of town on the rail. But
Well, one of my favorite stories is that they made something called a torpedo here in Cleveland, or was that the name of it? Was making a bomb or a torpedo.
it.
well,
Copper-
in his
rolling
stories,
mill.
in his
The copper
books,
rolling mill.
he called them torpedoes.
Yeah.
But actually, there was didn't that thing burn and explode? Start firing torpedoes all over.
Yeah, they said within a mile of
and
Cleveland.
everybody thought there was a huge
Well,
battle going on.
Let me.
You got the details on that.
Yeah, I happen to
I
have that
love
right in
that
front of me.
story.
The copper rolling mill.
Okay.
Was it the rolling mill?
This is Colonel Eli Long talking right here on the dispatch that he sent in November 1863. He says, I found Cleveland a considerable lot of rockets and shells, large quantities of corn, and several bales of new grain sacks, all belonging to the rebel government. He said, destroyed all that was not usable for us, burned several railroad cars, and found also here a large copper rolling mill, the only one of the kind in the whole Confederacy.
Yeah.
So the copper rolling mill here at Cleveland
Where was that? Look,
was, from everything that I can
South of the
find,
depot.
south of the depot, in the general area of the old Hardwick woolen mill, and just in that job. I cannot pinpoint it exactly, but from some soldiers' diaries that I've got into over the years, they just put it as in that.
Okay, there was the
location.
springs there that they used for the woolen mills, which is a creepy looking hole now that's got water in it.
Yeah.
I think that it was probably just on the other side of the road
Yeah.
from that, because that would probably be provided the water for
And
the
that was the
process. It's just what I always thought.
Did rot on that?
Yes,
Yeah,
Rolf
yeah.
owned that.
That's something maybe from the Copper Hill folks that they might be able to tell the history, because they have a lot of history about Rod.
Now, someone
Okay.
on our show one time gave us a lot of information about that rolling mill, but I don't remember who it is at
Yeah.
this moment.
And so, but what happened? I mean, so they just blew it up.
Well, as so many stories go in the Civil War, each side has their own version to it. Of course,
Imagine that.
yeah. Eli Long basically says that when he came into Cleveland after having a little skirmish in Charleston at the Huassee River, he came into Cleveland, took what he thought was usable for his command and army, and then burnt the mill. Well, the Confederate story is that, they got into a skirmish, similar to what Eli Long said, knew that the force was getting ready to run into Cleveland and maybe overtake things, so they took just about everything that was usable at the mill and everything else with them, and that a small fire broke out in the process of them getting things out, and it destroyed the mill, or most of it. So
Either way, the torpedoes and things started
Yes.
exploding, and both sides
Yes.
thought they were under attack and
Yes.
ran for the hills. That's what I understood.
Yes, there's several residents at that time, gave conflicting stories too, but there were no doubt that the bombs were blowing up and bursting in the air, as the song goes, and citizens in the area thought the whole county was under attack.
And I understand there was damage quite a
Yes,
distance away.
yes.
Now we got a call here. Good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hello, Ron.
Hello, Miss Ella. How are you doing?
I feel great this morning.
Well, guess who's sitting here? One of your old friends.
Huh?
Guess who's sitting here in the studio with us today?
I don't know.
John Cook.
Hey, John, I'm just looking at your picture.
Admiring your picture.
Yeah.
My wife listens to this show. We may not want to talk about that.
No, he took a picture of me and him in the studio one time, and I always see it on my phone.
So she's checking you out this morning, John.
Oh, or you done moved the family out to California, eh?
Well, I'm staying here till the end of August to see if I can get that apartment where my daughter lives, and to see if I can get on a price is right, because they're booked up right now.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, they're booked up, and they got me on hold for, in case somebody turned one down or something, to the 21st of July. So I'm going to wait until see if I get that one. Then if I don't, I'm going to wait to see if I can get in August. And I got to wait to see if my other daughter will come up to see me before I come back.
Well, listen, you were living here during the Civil War. What can you remember about
What?
anything?
I don't think I'm that old.
Oh, somebody told me you was here during the Civil War.
Well,
I'm 75. I don't know.
that might have been Ron. Yeah,
I'm not been a baby.
those people still not following you, are they?
Yes, they are. I don't know if Mark's in there. I haven't seen him in a couple of days, but the guys are still following me, yeah.
Ronald Dean.
He's
Ronald
probably in
Dean.
there, but he's probably hid somewhere.
Yeah, probably got the disguise on, don't he?
Yeah, he does. I've been to the motorcycle gang.
So what was your question again about the Civil War?
What? I don't have no question about the Civil War.
Oh, well, okay. Thanks for calling, Ella.
Hey,
Love you. Have a good time out there.
but my brother might have been there, but passed away. I mean, he was back. He was in the war in '45.
Oh, well, it could have been him then.
Hey, you're in charge.
Hey, thanks, Miss
Thanks,
Ella.
Miss Ella. Take it easy,
Love
baby.
you, Ella.
Bye-bye.
Oh yeah. Bye-bye.
Tell Mark hello. I don't know what to say now.
That moment of silence.
Deb,
Yes.
of course, since last time we talked about Civil War, we got another phone call here. Good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
I just talked to Mark yesterday. He's here in Cleveland. But anyway, I want to comment, John, on that song. That is a beautiful song. John always had a beautiful voice. This is Sid.
Yeah, thanks, Sid.
I'm real interested in this Civil War stuff, and I used to do a lot of metal detecting myself, and I had 5 metal detectors at one time, me and my boys. We never did nothing much in the Blue Springs area. We hunted around the Conestoga. Of course, there wasn't no Civil War activity going on down there much, I don't think, but it's an old place. There was no, there was old cotton gin down there, a whole bunch of stuff. But anyway, I'll try not to be brief and say everything I want. My question is, John, who found that cannonball that somebody told me about up on Fort Hill? It lodged in a tree.
I didn't hear all the questions.
Yeah, it's kind of cutting in and out.
That,
Who found a cannonball up on Fort Hill that was lodged in a tree?
yeah, or was that just a tale?
Yeah, I've not heard that one myself.
I hadn't either.
That was probably just a tale.
I have a piece of a cannonball fragment in part of a tree that I found up there about 25 years ago, but it wasn't a whole shell.
Was that on the north end of the cemetery near the Boys and Girls Club, or was it on the south end near the overpass?
Mine was the one I found was on the south end on Hillcrest,
Okay.
close to the overpass.
I had someone show me what would be the big thing that would be up on an officer's shoulder.
Epaulet.
Yeah, they found one of those up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, would that doesn't surprise you?
No,
You kind of tear those off and throw them down when the enemy comes.
Well, you don't want too much that's shiny and glistening in the sun to
It
give
says
somebody that says, here's your target.
Got any other questions there, Sid?
Yeah, and my son used to hunt up there, in Fort Hill. You was allowed to, as long as you didn't get close to a grave. And then they started being vandalism. People started, and then I think they've stopped it now. I don't know.
I'd feel a little bit weird about digging in a cemetery.
I'd find all 58 calibers up there all the time, and me and Mike Bailey and then my sons would go. And I'll tell you about this one experience I had too, but it didn't go back as far as the Civil War. But we actually stopped in Chatsworth one time, coming from a place over in LJ where they had this gold dredging shop and a big metal detector shop. And Mike said, let's just stop at the courthouse. I went to the police station and asked them. And they said we could hunt out there as long as we dug a plug and plugged it back all we wanted to, as long as we didn't get up close to the courthouse. We racked up on silver coins, and some old guy went by and said, hey, if you find anything in there, it's mine. He didn't know the metal detector I was using cost more than the vehicle that he was driving. Anyway, I had a whole lot of money in that Eagle Spectrum, and that thing was... VID. John knows what I'm talking about, and you do too, Ron.
Yep.
It was killer, and I had that, and I had a CX3, it talked, and then I had 2 GTA 1000s, which is a good little metal detector. Anyway, we'll get off of metal detectors and get back to the Civil War. And I used to love it, and I've still got my Spectrum that has side mount, where the wand was real light. Where the cord just runs, and you could swing that wand all day. And I found some old, they called it Doogaloo in Conestoga. It was tokens they give you.
Yeah, it's script money that was
Used
the
at the
Dooley
company
family,
store.
and that's why it was called Doogaloo for the Dooleys.
I don't know of any much Civil War activity that went on down there in Conestoga.
No, the railroad wasn't there, and it didn't matter much.
All right, we got to move on here. Thanks, Sid.
Thanks,
I
Sid.
just wanted to tell everybody hello, and I'm enjoying
All right.
part of this show. And I just talked to Mark yesterday. Mark's my hero. Mark's a nice guy. Hell, I don't know what's wrong with her, but he's not out in California.
Oh, well, we'll just have to see. All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. there's something I'd like to mention. Maybe one of our listeners will know something about it. There's a lady buried up in Fort Hill Cemetery, and her name is Mary E. Caldwell, and her maiden name was Robinson, and she was a member of the Ray County Spartans, which was it wasn't even women, it was just young girls like 18 and 19, 17, 16. And they all got arrested and marched to Chattanooga. They marched them over to a ferry and put them on a boat and took them to Chattanooga because somebody wanted them all arrested, and they finally just brought them back home. But she was a member of the Spartans, and she's buried over here, and that's all I know about her, and I'd like to know a little bit more. She was married to John Caldwell, and again, she was from Ray County and buried at Fort Hill.
Yeah. I want to mention, since last time we talked about the Civil War, Deb, of course, wrote a book going on 2 years ago now called Confederate Voices. And recently she won a national award from the United Daughters of the Confederacy, give her some national recognition for saving Confederate history. So congratulations to Deb on that. And we yesterday were up in Greene County, went to Andrew Johnson's birthplace and to his museum. And when there was an activity that's in her book that Andrew Johnson was here in Cleveland when that happened. Debbie, can you tell that story real quick?
Yeah, it's when
So we get through this phone call.
I may not hold the phone.
Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Just one more thing, Ron, and I'll leave it alone. I've got one of the most beautiful Dobros for sale that you've ever seen. It's a Dean, and it's silver nickel. It's actually metal. It's electric or acoustic, either one. It's a resonator guitar, but you put a thing in under up there right at the bridge and make it out of a dobro. And then I've got a $50. It's got wood mounted on a slide, and I hardly ever play it. I got two Martins and, my goodness, two banjos and whatever, and I hardly ever play that dobro. But we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
You can get in touch with me. You got my number there.
I do.
Man, I'll give you a good deal on it because, well, a lot of people that will.
That's exactly what I told him he could spend, was a good deal.
You can go on the.
Thank you, Sid.
You can go on the. Yeah, you can go on. You can stamp it up on the computer and see what's worth and all that.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I'll see you about it later.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, now, Deb, tell that story. Who are you calling?
I'm not calling anybody.
Oh, okay.
What? Oh, I forgot the story now.
Andrew Johnson was here when
Andrew Johnson was here when they were putting the American flag up at the courthouse.
and it was on a big tall pole too, right?
It was on a really big tall pole. But that's the story is Andrew Johnson was speaking, and they were raising the flag at the courthouse. But Mr. Camp, that had his hotel down across from the depot, was not a Union supporter. So he cut a hole in his own roof and stuck his Confederate flag up through there and caused this big hullabaloo while all this pomp and circumstance was going on at the courthouse.
Well, didn't all the guys march down there?
All the people came from the courthouse to rebel, and there was a big standoff, and finally somebody smart said, well, maybe if we go away, he'll just not threaten to shoot anybody and we'll be okay. So they just left him alone, and the flag flew through the entire war until it was just rotten and fell off the pole, though. But it's a good story, better than how I told it, but it does mention Andrew Johnson.
Does it say it's the first time the rebel flag flew in Tennessee?
Some people say it's the first time that the rebel flag flew in Tennessee.
Let me tell you, there's a place down in down near South.
May I ask? I'm sorry, they've
Go ahead.
typed this twice, so I want to ask it. How far up and down Blue Springs, following the railroad tracks, were the troops?
Oh, Lord.
Actually,
The answer is yes.
yes, from basically the old overhead bridge right there at Hillcrest all the way down to the Tennessee-Georgia line. They were scattered up and down. I don't know if anyone remembers the old brick two-story house that sat in front of Hickory Springs
I
before they
do.
tore it
Yeah.
down.
I've got a picture of it.
Okay, that house went back. And before they tore that down, my sister Sandy actually knew the people that owned it, and I got permission to go there and metal detect and found several Civil War items around it. And so, yeah, basically they were scattered. They had their major points of interest, of course.
Around the water.
But pretty much from there all the way to the Georgia line, they were scattered.
How many
up and
troops
down.
was that? Do you know?
Well, the 4th Army Corps at that time, now, this was full strength, and I'm sure in 63, 64, they were probably hat strength.
Yeah.
But they were talking around 28,000 men. So at one time before they got to Cleveland, they said they had close to 30-something. While they were in Cleveland, it was probably closer to 15 to 20,000.
What about Sherman down at Tucker Springs? How many was in that area?
Now, that supposedly was just a one-night camp, but we found way, way, way too much in the way of artifacts. He never did give a number, but I tracked him backwards from where he came from, Chattanooga and everything, and he had 2,800 guys with him, sent some of them towards Knoxville, and then 1,000 more came back. So he had anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 men when he was staying at
Well, that
Tucker
camp
Springs.
stretched all the way from there to Peerless
Well, it would
Mills.
have to.
It
Didn't it?
Peerless
They
Mill.
they had pickets set out,
Yeah.
you know, anywhere between 10 to 30 guys out from the camp in several directions. But they were, for the number of artifacts that we found there,
I think
that
they
was
had to
definitely
been there.
more than just a,
Is those pickets were they just to say
They had to been there several days
as
or
alarm
a week or so.
Yeah.
when the camp here is shooting up in the future? I mean, up the future, up from them. There's something's going on coming
yes,
your way.
it was just basically an early warning, you know, sign of saying,
We
hey,
were-
you know, somebody's coming, get ready.
We
get
were the first
prepared.
ones to find that camp. The first
Yeah.
ones to.
Yeah.
How many pieces you think came out of there?
Well, at one time I tried to keep track, but, you know, in
Couple
my early
thousand?
relic hunting days, I would try to put all the items I found in one particular camp or spot together.
Mm-hmm.
But I quit counting at Tucker Springs after about 1,000 or so
That's-
pieces,
I
bullets.
think probably a
buttons,
couple thousand or
So,
more.
That's unbelievable. That's
uh,
that's one of those. Now let me tell people, if considering doing metal detecting or do that, this is a lot of this is on private property. You must get
Permission.
Do not go on
Yes.
people's property just because you know there's.
And I will tell you this: a lot of these great sites are now off limits
Mm-hmm.
because of that. That there's a new younger group of, I guess, relic hunters out there that just, you mention a spot and here they head out with their shovels and picks, and they don't get permission. And say, I'm not even going. I'm afraid to even name names. I
Sure.
don't even
Yeah.
name names anymore, because there's one old gentleman that David had talked to several times, and the guy finally was kind enough to let us go on his property, and there were several gun pits, rifle pits up there, and just a beautiful spot. And I'd never stood in one before, but you could actually stand in a rifle pit that would still come almost, just below your knees. And shortly after that, just, and you're talking around and you mention a spot, and all of a sudden everybody's on there, and the old gentleman's furious because people are coming. And so, to be fair, he just stops anybody from going on.
Yeah.
Now,
and something else going
well,
on.
they go in, they dig the property up. First, they trespass if you don't get permission.
Right.
Leave
Then they
trash.
go in and
Yeah.
leave trash where they've carried in drinks, and then they dig holes a lot bigger than you need to dig a hole
And
to
you
pull
know-
up a relic if you know what you're doing, and they
Don't fill
they
it
leave
back.
it. So people just wanting to take a leisurely walk are now stepping in potholes. They usually, a bad group of metal detectors or relic hunters will leave more potholes than the war did.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing happens with the Indian relics,
Yeah.
but you don't know where they are, so they dig big holes.
Right.
But anytime that you find a grave mound, the very center of it will be dug out because people believe that that's where they can find. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, no, you don't dig in
And
people's graves.
now it is illegal to sell Indian artifacts. Is that not true?
Yes.
Okay, so don't do that.
So
I
don't go out
did
and dig
not
them.
know that.
Yes, it is.
Well,
So the Indian artifacts that I have, it's illegal to sell them.
yes.
Wow.
You have to be really careful. You have to be able to try to prove that when you found it and where you found it, and you have to be really careful with it.
Well,
I don't
Tracy
know all the ropes.
found most of ours, and it was the old-fashioned way, like everybody just
Stumbled into it.
walking up the
Yeah.
river when the water's
They're,
down, poking at it with a
Yeah,
stick.
and but now TVA says, well, if that's my river, that's my artifact.
Yeah.
So you have to be really careful with that.
Good old TVA.
TVA owns that
And
river, huh?
You have to realize every day we lose Civil War
Oh,
sites
Lord, yes.
because every time there's a new house They could have been an Indian grave there. They could have been a Civil War there, and it's just progress. And so this stuff you guys have found is really saving history.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you about a place
Hey,
called.
sometimes you did not mean to interrupt, but sometimes you just barely miss it.
Uh-huh.
David, I remember one time he was researching and looking for a particular encampment, and calls me up one day and said, "Found it." I said, "Fantastic. Where is it?" He said, "Under Dr. Scholl's."
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and where the Forest Service is, there was a camp in there, and and some things.
And literally, Dr. Scholl's was fairly new because he even, my memory serves me right,
I missed
I'm
it by
60
about
now.
2 weeks.
Yeah, and he was actually trying to find out where they hauled the dirt because he was going to go, which would have been a great idea.
You know, which is a thing that I know I've been to several of the meetings of the people around the area that do metal detecting, and you know, when they start digging somewhere, the guys go in there first, you know, to see if they can find stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's when you need to retrieve stuff.
Yeah.
You know, go ahead and dig that hole, you know, find it and save it.
Yeah, let me tell you a place called Button Willow down in South Pittsburgh, Whitfield. It's a little dinner theater. Whitwell. Yeah, I get everybody know where Whitwell is. It's a little dinner theater if you've not been there, and they serve food that would have been served during the Civil War. And they use the older style forks, and
It's really old leftovers.
and the guy has written
Two-pronged forks.
Yeah.
Dot forks.
Yeah, that's what I call it. Just pick those peas up in my hand. But he's done a little play, and the play's okay. But what they do in it, he talks about all the flags that were used during the Civil War, and we always think that the bars and stars, what we call the Dixie flag, was the Confederate flag, which it was not. It was a battle flag, and really it was not a hated flag until probably the 1940s when the Dixiecrats out of South Carolina started using it as their symbol. And Dixie was even played at, the song Dixie was played at Abraham Lincoln's inauguration. So if you want to learn a lot about the Civil War and find out that the rebel flag was not a hatred flag until way up into our modern times, into our fathers' times. So I just thought it's interesting. If you ever want to do it, it's about a $35 charge to go down there and have dinner. It's a nice dinner. You get a play. I can say the play, you know, you ain't going to say that's the greatest play ever seen. But from a history standpoint, I think it's very, very good.
I'm assuming we're going to be eating chicken.
Yep, always chicken.
I kind of like to look at what we do as preserving history one piece at a time.
Oh, it is, definitely.
You know, and I've given away numerous artifacts over the years to children at schools where I've went and done presentations.
Your collection's your 401k, isn't it?
Well, the way things are going, yes.
I would tell you a figure that a gentleman offered him probably 15 years ago.
I've heard this, and it was
It's
a good
embarrassing, which is probably quadrupled.
You know, but if you really count in, and a lot of people, I think when you talk about Civil War relic hunting or treasure hunting, they get the illusion that you know you're going to bring home treasure and gold and silver and valuable relics every time. But we've probably been doing this 30, 35 years. So what is 30, 35 years of your time worth? I don't even want to add up the gas, and I have about 4,000 books now, probably a couple of thousand maps. So,
See, does that sound familiar, Ron?
I might have broke even over the years, you know, but hey, it's fun.
It's fun. It's your hobby.
Well, it kept you in really good shape. We should have been with you.
Someone online saying that when they moved Dalton Pike, which I think in 1956, I know that they moved Dalton Pike some. They put the road in behind Flint Springs Church.
Mm-hmm.
They said that they were allowed to go in there, and they found a lot of medical equipment at that time.
We got a call here. Good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
Yeah, this is T-Bandy.
Hey, T-Bandy.
Hey, T-Bandy.
That's my 2 cents worth for in this morning.
Go ahead.
I got a fish truck coming Saturday, July the 12th.
Okay.
And at 11 o'clock till 12 o'clock.
Okay.
And I need all the orders I can get.
Okay, tell them what number to call.
478-245-310-6918. I got a feller. I just not called a feller Neil Henry.
Yes.
He's going to call you, I think.
Neil Henry.
We would love for him to call us. Thank you, T.
He
know that
he
name.
does that reenactment every time they have it. He said his cousin owned the cannon.
Yeah. He shoots it.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, good talk to you.
Thank
All right,
you,
bye-bye.
T.
Bye.
David, what's your one piece that you is your
Coup d'etat.
Wait, we got another caller. You're getting lit up here. Good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning, Ron. Deb, how you doing?
Doing great.
How are you?
I just want to say hello to John and David, especially John there. John actually was causing me winning my first contest on Whoop Radio.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's no longer there. It's like Cleveland Dome's history now.
Yeah, that's back in the days before my show was canceled.
Yeah. Well, I hate that the dome's been torn down, but you got to make things safe.
Yeah, that's right. Deb, I got a question for you if you don't care.
Go ahead.
You had my pictures there for a while, and one of them, now I think John making that. Now, is there a place I can take it and get it kind of re-enhanced or brought back to life, my picture?
Dale Clark.
Dale Clark.
What's the name of his?
They're looking at each other.
Dale's probably. I tell you what, I'll give you his number.
Well, you can get this number. You can call me at this number. I think you got caller ID there. You can call me.
Okay, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, we got your number.
Dale is great at what you're talking about. He can enhance and work on and do all kinds of wild things with old photographs. I've seen some of his work.
Sounds good.
I'm just like Ron now on one of my pictures. Ron said I was a cute little boy and said, "What happened to me?" I said, "I just grew older." Anyways, good talk to you.
Thanks, Bullet. Bye.
I always thought it was somebody else. Those are my younger pictures.
David, was there actually ever or not, or is it just an old
Hold your thought there.
Urban legend about a cannon being found in the creek up at Tasso?
Hold that answer. Go
I know
ahead,
people
caller.
look for it for years. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, this is Joe.
Hey, Joe. What's up, buddy?
You was talking about that house there on.
Yeah, you gave me a picture of that house, didn't you?
It used to be Reynolds' property.
Reynolds.
Yeah, Nell Reynolds. She died back in the 80s.
Yep, that's what I told them when they mentioned that house, that I had a picture of it. And I think that probably, I don't know, but I'd say that was older than the Civil War house, much older than the Civil War.
Well, I tell you who could tell you about it. It's who was our fire chief here before this last one?
David May.
Yeah, I think he got some of the bricks out of it.
Well, I've invited David to be on the show, and that's a good thing for me to talk to him about when he's on the show.
Yeah, and I found another picture of it too. If John them needs it.
Well, if you bring it to me, I'll make a copy of it and and give it back to you.
Okay.
Sounds good, but you don't need to bring it today. Just the next time you come in to visit.
All right.
Thanks, Joe. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Joe's already been here once today. He brought me a real pretty Christmas cactus.
Go ahead now, John.
Cannon in the creek. True,
Cannon
not
in the
true.
creek.
Well, yeah, the cannon in the creek. There's about actually 4 stories that float around this county about cannons in the mud or cannons in the creek or cannon buried up on the ridge. And
I'll get people comment.
I've
So
yet
you know anything about a cannon in the creek?
today
Let's
to
start laughing.
actually find one, and I've yet to actually find any documentation, what I call official, like the official records of the Civil War or a soldier's diary or something like that, where one of them's actually mentioned, hey, the carriage broke and we had to abandon this piece of artillery right here. I did go and look on a couple of different occasions, and I got real excited one time when I found a 3-foot section of old rusted water pipe, which that's all it turned out to be. Also, up on Harrison Pike, up on the ridge right there, where they actually had a skirmish at. There was supposedly part of a cannon barrel sticking out of the ground. And I really got excited the day I went up there because I dug down about 2 feet and seen something brass with a nice green patina on it, and it turned out just to be a part of actually an old crock medal. But I've never heard of anyone finding something like that, but I've heard a lot of tales. So,
Right. Go ahead, caller. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, me?
Yes, you.
Hey, this is RD.
Hey, RD.
Hey, RD. What's up, buddy?
Hey. I do a little metal detecting. I've never been fortunate enough to find, I found when they were doing some work down there at Inman Street and Keith Street, they had a big mound of dirt, and I poked through there, and I found what I think is an old turned brass handle for magnifying glass. But I've never been fortunate enough to find any Civil War stuff on a lot of wheat pennies and stuff. But you mentioned the theater with the old-fashioned forks.
The theater. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
the old fork.
Yes.
And it's unrelated to what you're talking about, but it's an interesting story about the fork. It's a relatively modern utensil. They didn't really come into vogue until the mid-1800s, and before that they were consigned to the very wealthy people. The poorer people just ate with spoons and
Fingers.
yeah, their fingers. But I work for the phone company, and Alexander Graham Bell, of course, inventor of the telephone, when he was a very, very wealthy man, born in Edinburgh, Scotland, raised in wealth. He immigrated to the United States, and he was working on not the telephone, but the invention to help deaf people speak. Is when he hired Watson, who was a very poor man, but he was an early electrical genius. He could figure out circuits, wires. He hired Watson, who was just a day laborer, basically, very poor. Watson was invited to Bell's mansion to eat dinner with him, get to know him. And, of course, when Watson got to this gigantic mansion, it was completely foreign world for him. So when they sat down to eat dinner that night, they laid forks down. And Watson had no idea what that was. He'd never seen a fork before. And in his diary, he writes that he was completely befuddled by this thing, didn't know what to do with it, but didn't want to be a fool, so he had to sit for the first few minutes and watch the other guests use the fork before he could figure out how to do it. And he said the whole time he was eating his meal, he was just terrified he was going to stab himself in the face with it while he was eating.
That's kind of how I feel when you sit down and you got a whole bunch of different spoons and forks and stuff. I always kind of wait and see who picks up a fork first.
That's right. So, but I've always thought that was a pretty good, unrelated to what you're talking about, but I've always liked that story about poor Watson there, just confused at a rich man's house. So, but anyway, I'm enjoying the show. Always doing.
Thank you, RD.
Stuff. Y'all take care.
All right, bye-bye. So, David, what's your favorite piece of all time?
Wow. That would be tough. Well, one of the items that John had mentioned about the newspaper being in the scabbard tip, because, that was a time capsule, and you're not going to dig up a piece of newspaper out of the ground even a few years later. But I have a locket that either the soldier made it or his wife made it for him when he was going off to war. It's made of 3 or 4 different types of chain, and with a heart-shaped locket on the end. It has a small silver wedding band, very, very small, definitely a woman's size. I have a bullet that a soldier set down an infield, and he carved CS in it. So these items are not real valuable, but they're personal, and they mean a lot.
Go ahead, caller. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hello, I'd like to say something about the rolling mill.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. Right. Who are we talking to?
It's Pat Gear.
Hey, Pat, go ahead.
Okay, I always imagined that rolling mill would have been steam driven, steam engine driven. It takes a tremendous amount of horsepower.
Yeah, we're all shaking our heads yes.
I'm sorry.
We were all shaking our heads yes. We think so too.
Okay, and could you talk about some of the local family fighting. Josh, you know, you've mentioned Mr. Lusk down in off of Dalton Pike.
Yes.
And supposedly some raiders or somebody was skirmishing there or scrounging around, and he shot him.
Yes.
And I think I've seen that rifle that is passed down in his family. I think it was an Enfield, but I'm not real up on, you know, identifying old rifles. But his, one of his descendants told me that it was his rifle.
Very well possible.
Could you talk about some of that family
We will, yes.
fighting in here? Because I think there's as much family fighting as there was, you know, organized combat.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Pat.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Then we're going to take a break here. We'll be right back here with some more on Old Town Cleveland right after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
You need money overnight? Check into cash. Your time is tight. .com. Bank account's too low? Check into cash. So where do you go? .com. Do it online in a record time. It's the easy way to get money next day. Do a quick click from home at checkintocash.com. Just stay in the house, check into cash, and grab your mouse.com. Get your money online, check into cash, right on time.com. You can be sure it's secure from our bank straight to yours. Do a quick click from home at checkintocash.com. No time to get away, check into cash. You've got to stay home.com. Hey, that's okay, check into cash. You can do it alone.com. Any old time, do it online. Just stay in the house and grab your mouse. Do a quick click from home. Get your money overnight at the right website. Do a quick click from home. Go to checkintocash.com.
Wheeler Technologies has moved. Visit them at their new location at 490 Grove Avenue Southwest next to Bradley Rentals. Same great folks, same great service with a better location to serve you. Call Wheeler Technologies for voice, data, and security needs at 664-TECH. That's 664-8324. And remember, depend on Wheeler Technologies for the current time and temperature every day at 476-1111. Tennessee Alarm Contractor C1750.
WOOP FM is a non-profit community radio station that is made possible by generous donations by individuals and the following sponsors.
Songbirds are singing, the dells seem to say, gone. They have gone home. Gone. They have gone home. They've joined the heavenly fold. They're walking the streets of pure gold. They left one by one as their work here was done. Gone home. They have gone home. Gone home. They have gone home.
We play that song every week for all those who are friends and families and your neighbors who've passed on during the last week, called Gone Home. This is Old Town Cleveland here. We're back on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can call us here at listen at www.whoopfm.com, or call us like this caller at 614-5553. Go ahead, caller.
They changed their minds.
Oh, we'll call back at 614-5553. We got John Cook and his older brother David Cook here today. I think that's a big lie.
That's $10.
Yeah, is it about? Are you 10 years younger?
Something like that.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, Ron, this is Bob.
Hey, Bob fought in the Civil War.
I've been telling you show this morning that John Cook, he's a fine person. He's a good person.
Yeah, Bud, he fought in the Civil War, and Ella was a nurse that took care of him.
Listen, what I called about, and I thought you or John or some of your listening audience, Ron, I have a captured Japanese battle flag that was captured from the Japanese during World War II.
Wow.
And all the soldiers signed the flag. And several years ago, I had it professionally framed at a Case of Art Gallery, you know. And I want to sell that for $1,000 if you guys see might be interested in it.
Interesting.
And for cash, you'll go $1,200, right?
So I'm sorry.
If they got cash, you'll take $1,200, right?
Oh yeah, if they got cash, we'll go $1,200. Yeah.
Well, seriously, someone might be interested in that, Bob.
True. It's a very rare item. It would be an ideal gift for like someone who fought the Japanese, or their sons or daughters,
or a museum. All righty. Sounds great, Bob. Good talking to you, buddy.
All right, now look here. Let me ask you one other question. Now, Red, do you think she would fight for the Confederate or the Yankees?
I believe she would be a Confederate general.
I think she'd be a Confederate.
Yeah. I agree.
All right, boys, I'm going to enjoy it.
All righty.
I think her great-great-grandfather was...
If someone calls you about that flag, just give them a call.
Okay, sounds good.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
You were talking a few minutes ago about David's favorite piece that he found. My favorite piece that he found. I call it the miracle piece, just to show you how tenacious he is. Confederates had what they call a snake buckle. You correct me if I'm telling this wrong, but David found half of a snake buckle, which they're rare.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find just half, I mean, that's great. That's you'd think that'd be all you need. But he actually decided to go back out. He figured if he found half of it, the other half might be out there, which would be
miraculous.
Yeah, would be a miracle. And you found the other half, didn't you?
Yeah.
He actually found the other half of the snake buckle.
And there's not a lot of Confederate pieces, period, though, right? Because the Confederates were a militia.
If they could beat it into something else or melt it into something
and
else
the bullets,
or
they
shoot it at you, they didn't. No, they didn't leave stuff laying around.
Go ahead, caller. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, Ron.
Hey.
I just wanted you to know that if I find out where Bob Cash lives, I'm thinking about burning his house.
Oh, no. Let's don't do that.
Because he called in when Doug Mizell was there that day and asked if I was running around with that old goat man when he used to come.
Well,
I'm getting even with him.
Fred, I hate to tell you, but he's just picking on you because he likes you.
Well, he better quit picking on me. He could say something nice instead of something bad all the time.
Well, he will take you to dinner as long as you buy.
I know that.
Yes, he is.
Well, I'm not going out with nobody I have to buy dinner with.
Yeah.
For.
Well, now, if you bought some of that corn, that liquid corn that you have stored under your bed there, you could probably get him to buy or do just about anything. He'd buy you a new car if you give him a little of that corn liquor.
You think he would?
You get him drunk, he'll spend his money.
I might pick a couple jugs up and go see him then.
Yeah,
he give you that flag.
You can get you a darn Cadillac.
I want that flag anyway. I'm going to fly it over my house.
All right.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, the Confederates basically did not wear. Most of them did not have uniforms. Only, David, help me out here. Just generals and some troops, but most of them were just
Usually
militia.
some rich guy in the community got them outfits made.
Here you go. We got another caller. Go ahead, caller.
Hey, it's RD again.
Hey,
Yes.
RD.
You still got my number, Debbie?
Yes, I do.
Text me Bob's number. I think I'm interested in that flight.
Okay. Wait. All righty.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Well, actually, I mean, probably half, according to records now, of the Confederates were outfitting them, but this was in the very beginning of the war. And pretty much by the first year and a half of the war, it was just whatever. So that's why a lot of times some of the Confederate camps that I've got into over the years along Candy's Creek, by the research, knowing good and well who the guys were that's supposed to have been there, I'm finding mostly Union items, and I would find a few Confederate pieces. But by that time of the war, a lot of people that are historians or like me and John do Civil War research and metal detecting and stuff, they joke about Wheeler saying his biggest supply was the Union Army. They would use a lot of stuff that they captured. I do have one photograph at home that I copied out of a book, and it's showing a Confederate regiment, and you can count at least 12 different types of uniforms just in that one picture. And I could see sometimes how that could get confusing in a battle if your guys are out in front of you, especially sharpshooters, and they're in a dark brown bluish color, and the Union troops are advancing on you, and they're in the blue, and your guys are retreating back. A lot of times there's a lot of confusion there, but yeah, it's really a hodgepodge. There's a few times I have got into spots and would strictly find almost just Confederate stuff, but that's guys that were really well supplied. But halfway through the war, that hardly happened too much.
John, what's your favorite piece?
Oh, goodness.
I know what it is of mine, of yours.
What's
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I understood that somehow.
When we were at Tucker Springs, I got in the spot and I was digging several bullets, and John said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I've gotten several bullets." I said, "Head this way," and he got about halfway in between, and he got a signal and dug, and it was just a round piece of metal, mostly iron, probably about 3.5 inches round in diameter. A little bit of solder on top of it, and I kept looking at it and like, that looks like top of a ration can lid. I said I would keep that. He was going to chunk it, but I said those are kind of neat pieces. I dug a few sardine cans in there, and later when he got home and he cleaned it off, it actually had a soldier's name that he had carved in. If memory serves me right, it seems like it was J.K. Pekesler.
Yeah.
And it even gave his company regiment,
Kentucky Volunteers,
that he was in, and that was at the Tucker Springs location. So to me, anytime you can get personalized items like that,
yes.
But that's my favorite piece that he has.
It's off a can of figs.
Yeah,
had a little star in the middle of it, said figs, and he had, like David said, taken a knife and carved his name and regiment.
Yeah.
Right, I guess he didn't want anybody stealing his figs.
Yeah,
but
let's get this call here and wait. Hold this. Go ahead, caller. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
How's Johnny doing today?
Still here.
Hey, this is old Cotton. Used to go to school with you, these Cleveland.
Oh, hey, Cotton, what's going on?
I used to metal hunt some too. I want to know if you ever been down at Blue Springs. Right when you get to the school, turn left. Right before you get to it, go across that creek on top of that ridge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was up there one time hunting, and I found several bullets, but there's a rock pile up there, and there's a trench dug around that thing.
Yeah.
and I found 2 horseshoes, them old-timey horseshoes over in that rock pile. And I didn't know if you ever been on that side of the hill or not.
Oh, yeah, we've been all over.
There was a lot of pickets up there from the guys that were camped around the school. That camp actually stretched from over to Dalton Pike, which the Mouse Farm, all the way over to Tucker Springs. The whole 4th Army Corps is just spread out all through there. There was actually a road at one time that went over the ridge from Blue Springs Road right by the school over the ridge and connected into Dalton Pike. It's still kind of visible today, but they put several new houses on the Dalton Pike side now. It used to be a man called Mr. White that lived right across the railroad tracks, and that road went across his property across the ridge.
Yeah, that's the only time I ever went there, but me and John England went to Resaca, Georgia one time, and the thing that blew my mind, I hit a spot. I dug down about 12, 14 inches, and I found all this burnt firewood. Well, I dug it all out, put it on the ground, run my detector across it. I found 2 bullets, one that was mashed and one that had teeth prints in it. And John told me they said around the fire at night, and dig them bullets out of them soldiers, and they'd give them one to bite on.
It works in the movies every time.
Yeah,
And a lot of times I think squirrels and woodland creatures would chew on them.
I've done a few not so smart things in my life, as my wife has told me before, but one of them was trying to bite the bullet, as they say. And, they are made out of lead, and lead is a soft metal. But I tell you what, I didn't hardly make a dent in it, and I had a toothache for about a week.
You'd have to be in some major pain.
Yeah, most of any time you see something like that, it is animals, squirrels, and other things that have gnawed into them.
I pulled a nice little piece off of the ridge there at Blue Springs, and it was from what I can make out, they had set down. They would carve all kinds of things out of those mini balls. They would carve chess pieces or little animals or what. But I've got one that I keep in a case. It's a duck's head. Looks like it taken a mini ball and just flattened it, and then really took a lot of time in smoothing it and just carved out a duck's head. Don't know why. I guess just something to do.
Yeah.
Nothing else to do.
All right,
Thank you.
I'll see you later.
Pat had asked about a story, and I think one of the stories in my book that's always interests me to read and reread it. There's a fellow named James Letford that lived up.
Get this call right here.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Debbie, but that thing that guy found he thought was brass went on a magnifying glass. It's probably an old razor handle. But I found several of them down around Contact. No razor handle, where you screwed it up.
Yeah, the kind you would screw and it would open the razor up.
Yes.
Yeah, that could. I've seen those.
Yeah, it would actually. I think the head had come off before you loaded it. I don't know, but they was always brass. But anyway, what I was going to ask John and David, do they remember up? And I
can't hear anything he's saying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, man, I want to speak up just a little bit.
We can't hear you.
I don't know if the volume up here or not. Okay, let me speak up. I was going to ask John David, at the road on 64, where you used to be Cherokee Corners, and you turned off right and went back in there a little way, or I can't remember if you went the Cookson Creek way, but it was toward Ben Mallin, or Ben Mallin is. But there's an old, great big house.
The Cloud House.
That's the Cloud House.
I heard it was used during the Civil War for actually a hospital. Is that true?
I haven't heard any Civil War stories about the Cloud House.
I've heard the story, but I don't have any documentation that I've ever found that would say yes to that. So,
yeah.
No. I hadn't either. And that would be off the main drag.
Yeah.
There was no reason for troops to be over in there unless it was
And no major battle
the
happening
guerrillas. Yeah.
riding there at that time or anything.
All righty. Thank you, Sid.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I was having a hard time hearing him. Anyway, James Ledford lived over in the edge of Polk County, and he was quite a young man when he went to the war. And he fought at Shiloh, Nashville, Murfreesboro, Chickamauga. He spent 4 years in Fort Delaware prison, which was horrible, I understand. And when he came back, he was running a mill in Polk County, and his mill messed up that morning. It wasn't working, so he took the folks' grain over across the mountain to Jack River, and he was going to fix the grain there, grind the grain there. And they had a real freak accident. The millstone exploded and killed him. Wow. And I'm thinking, now he survived Shiloh, Murfreesboro, Chickamauga, all of those big battles. He survived 4 years in prison to come home and in a short time be killed by a millstone. I thought that was pretty...
very ironic.
Very ironic story. There is a picture of him in my book, which is highly unusual, too. But anyway, that's one of my favorite stories. Now, the Reeder house, which is Mrs. Jackson's house over on Harrison Pike, it's now white. It was, of course, the red clay, as we talked about a couple of years ago. And there was some fighting there between the troops that Mrs. Hardwick witnessed. Her house was over close to where Fletcher Park is now, and she witnessed this activity. But there were a number of times that when the fighting started among the soldiers from the outside, and I know John will tell us that there was some pretty good size activity over there, like where the exercise place is.
That's the
fitness factory.
The fitness factory.
Yeah.
And
there's actually a couple thousand involved in that.
Yeah, a couple thousand.
2 to 3.
Out of town folks fighting. So what did everybody in town do? The Union and the Confederate folks went and got in the basement at the Reeder house and the house that's at the intersection of Highway 60 and Harrison Pike, or Georgetown Road and Harrison Pike is the gray house, but now the house that was there during the Civil War has burned. Right. And that's a replacement house. But anyway, there was people in the basement of that house there too, and you read that in several different just common folks' diaries. Yeah. And Myra Inman did us a great service. I mean, she was a 13-year-old girl, but she was really keeping up with the politics and the church activity and her personal life during the war. So that helps us too. What you got there, David?
Well, this is actually a follow-up to the battle, just what you were talking about this in. This is from Henry Jordan. He talks about, it says, on the morning of the 27th, this is 1863 in November, it says, I was ordered to proceed to the north side of town, talking about Cleveland, and cover the front of the 1st Ohio Cavalry while their horses were being groomed. He says, at sunrise, under orders received the previous evening, I took my position in column and took up line of marks in the direction of Harrison. So they were going back out from Harrison Pike to cross Candy's Creek. Said the enemy, in the meantime, having appeared in force on the east side and north sides of town, opened upon us a vigorous fire, reaching and crossing Candy's Creek about 3 miles from town. Says I received an order to return because the 1st Ohio Cavalry was really getting their booties kicked basically by the enemy. He said, I recrossed the creek, returned about 1 mile, which puts you right there where the Jackson house and lakes are at. Then he says, I dismounted past the road in the gap of the line of hills, which formed a line on the hill on the north side of the road. The 98th Illinois at the same time went to the south side of the road. Says we at once opened fire on the enemy. Says while the cavalry forming our rear guard passed through the gap, fought for a few minutes, and they came back through the gap. Said the enemy then opened upon us a vigorous fire, also with artillery, wounding 8 of my men at one time. It says the enemy passed my left flank and was rapidly gaining the summit of a hill almost immediately in my rear. He said, I was communicated to by my rear guard. We began to recross Candy's Creek. He goes on to talk about, he says that he had, he says in this report he only had 1 kill. In a later report, it's 6 killed, 8 wounded, 10 missing. And this all took place, he's talking about on a Friday.
Wow.
Now, a lot of that artillery fire they were talking about was that coming from Fort McPherson and Fort Sedgwick?
Well, at that particular time, it was actually at the intersection of Harrison Pike and Georgetown Road, going away all the way back to where Bradley High School now sits, the country club. And I actually found an artillery shell up on the hill past the fitness factory.
We got a caller, boys.
Go ahead, caller.
Hey, Dan, this is George Shelton. I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask these
Go
people.
ahead.
One is the split between Confederate and American, Union soldiers in this area. And the second is I have a great-grandfather that fought on the Confederate side, and he was in the Polk County Regiment. And I've got a picture of him, and he has a Maltese cross on his lapel, like a lapel pin. And I was kind of curious about what that might be.
That is a Southern Cross of Honor that was given by the United Daughters of the Confederacy after the war.
Yeah. So that would be post-war.
And was he a Shelton?
Yeah, he was. It's Robert Shelton. That would be my great-great-grandfather.
Now, some of the Sheltons from some of the research I'd done over in that area didn't live too far from some of the Biggs, Biggs.
I'd like to get with you. I'd like to see if you could maybe find some history on him. I know my nephew has traced him back to a Polk County Regiment. That's where he come out of. That's where he fought out of.
Yeah.
And some of the skirmishes that they were in, we have documentation on that. His regiment that fought in that, but. And I was just kind of curious. That is a Southern Cross? Is what that is?
It's a Southern Cross of Honor, and you probably need to pick up on my books because I got a whole bunch of Sheltons in it.
Oh, really?
Well, as far as the split, Confederate and Union, Tennessee voted overwhelmingly for the Confederacy, but East Tennessee was actually a little bit more pro-Union than it was Confederate, so probably that old saying that you've heard over time about brother against brother, neighbor against brother was really noticeable in East Tennessee than it was in Middle and West Tennessee because it was really split up.
My family was the Eppersons from down around Buck's Pocket, and they fought for the Union.
Now, Bradley County, I think, probably as far as population, had more Union sympathizers than Confederate, but
a little bit more. Yeah.
But the people with the money were Confederate sympathizers.
Mm-hmm.
Because even when Hurlburt did his book, it was the larger families that had been rooted here from long before that were Confederate minded and really went crazy over the book and wanted to. First, they asked folks in Nashville to ban the book, and of course they told them they couldn't really do that in America, so they proceeded to buy them up as many copies as they could and burn them down at the courthouse. But I won't mention any family names, but I remember we were told we might want to be careful printing that book because we might offend some of them since their families are still here.
Families are still here.
Do you have any other questions?
Enjoy your show. Thanks.
Thank you.
What
I did find there's a picture of his relative in my book that he was at one of the reunion meetings, and he does have on his Cross of Honor, and those were given out in 1906 to 1914. And I've yet to find only one family that actually is still in possession of the cross.
Oh yeah, the Dietrich family.
Yes,
the
Dietrich family.
Family's one. What other families in this area fought in the war? And what was the highest? Do you know what the highest ranking person from Bradley County was?
Vaughn.
I believe it was Vaughn.
He may have been from Riceville.
Yeah, there's a little question there about that.
He's either a hero or a zero. But now he had his wife and his 4 daughters were arrested.
Yes.
And held captive during the entire war. The only women out of anybody's family. Yeah. So that would make me have a tendency to feel like he's in my book too. Yeah. Have a tendency to be he was doing a lot of damage.
Yeah.
I was watching the Antique Roadshow last night, and they had a picture on there getting the praise of the splitting of the Union and the Confederate. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
When the two split, and it had a picture of Abraham Lincoln standing on one side, and I forget who.
Jefferson Davis,
Yeah, he was
the president of the Confederacy. Yes.
Yeah, that picture went for over $100,000.
Wow.
For over $100,000.
I haven't seen. I
haven't felt that one yet.
Yeah. We never find those, Joe. Okay, thank you. That is interesting. You know.
But
I never have those valuable things.
Did we not have a senator from the Confederacy?
Tibbs from here was in the Confederate, the Congress, Confederate Congress,
right? Yeah.
And Tibbs, and there was a Smith. I mean, Tibbs and Smith were here, and they were both with the Confederacy, and they were congressmen. One of them's buried over at when you go straight across at Ladd Springs, over in that little cemetery over there.
If
Smith.
The what if you joined the Confederacy from here? What troops did you? I mean, where did you usually sign up to? I mean, was there a certain group that everybody went with, or was
it's
at just different times they formed companies?
Yes, and you could actually muster in here or Hamilton County, and you could wind up being sent actually to join up with another regiment.
Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hey, Ron, I want to tell John good morning. Tell him be good.
Okay, Anna.
Too
Thank
late.
you. Too late.
You're 60 years too late.
Thanks, Anna.
I went to school with a nut.
With the nut, yeah.
Okay.
Thank
he loves you too.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Well, okay.
Bye-bye.
Sometimes you feel like a nut.
We had Samuel Axel Smith, and he was a young attorney in Cleveland, born in Monroe County, and when he was 23, became the district attorney here, held that position for 5 years, and then he was a member of the Congress on the Democrat ticket. When the war started, he became collector of arms, which basically is kind of like a treasurer of sort for the Confederacy, and he lived right here in Cleveland.
Well, go ahead, call. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Debbie, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was telling me. I have a notebook somewhere that I had got all the copies and research of different places that I'd ordered from Polk County News, and you could used to get them for like 50 cents. I had research on everything, like Consaga, the Hildebrands up in the mountains, back in just you could order it from the Polk County newspaper, and that's how I'd done a lot of my research from when I did.
Yeah, that's still true. You can stop at the Polk County newspaper. Sometimes you can order the stuff online. They just make copies of newspaper articles that's run over the last few years.
I've looked for that notebook. I just was looking for it a while ago because I could answer that guy's question, because all I had to do was stamp or go into that. So many I have got in there in that notebook, and it's here somewhere.
All righty.
And but anyway, I wanted to ask John too a question. It was something about about the Civil War. Did they actually? Okay, Fort Hill was actually a fort.
Yes.
Well, it's
more than one fort.
Fort Hill. There actually wasn't. There might have been. I guess you'd call it more of a
some kind of little sheds or
like
something up there.
Like a redoubt, earth and some wood,
yeah,
but
redoubt
nothing,
or something.
Not a major structure.
It's not like you had in the cowboy pictures.
Now, was that Fort McPherson or Fort Sedgwick?
Okay.
McPherson was on Fort Hill, and then Sedgwick was down on where Hillcrest would be.
Yeah. Okay. One more question. The Trail of Tears, was that before the Civil War? Or after?
Honey, that was before the Civil War.
Before.
Yeah.
Way before.
Okay.
Thank you.
The old fort. Listen, the old fort was used for a little fort to protect the Indians.
Yes, the old fort that it was called
And
it was called Morrow's Fort during the Trail of Tears, and then it was called Mars Fort during the Civil War, and it is now at G Creek.
Okay. The actual location of that thing, I researched, and where I figured out, only thing I figured out where it was actually located at to begin with was the highest point right there in Old Fort, and that was just right south, or just right back this way from the elementary school there, and I
always understood it was where Old Federal Road came into what is now 411. It was real close to that area.
Yes.
It was on that farm, and they were using it for a smokehouse when they donated it. And I believe it was in its original location when it was moved. So it's no big mystery, I don't think. It's right there where Old Federal Road hits 411 Highway.
All right. Thank you, Sid. All right.
Point at me. I have no. I will tell you guys. I called to give Bob Cash that number.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little noisy. I think he might have already been bellied up to the bar this morning.
He was trying.
10:30.
Not.
He's already down.
11:30. Excuse me. It was.
He's
after
already
11.
down at Gypsy Rose,
He was
flirting
going,
with that fat
"Give
girl
me
at the end
any
of the
beer."
bar.
That little fat girl's having to
the
load him up
Southern
in.
troops. If you wanted, you could go anywhere and sign up, and so a lot of Bradley County people ended up at Vicksburg.
Oh, yes. You would get mustered to wherever they thought you were needed the most.
So you didn't get to stay in Tennessee necessarily.
No, not necessarily.
Although it was the Army of Tennessee a lot of times.
And there was a little bit of, you could say, in-house bickering to a point, too, because some of the people that's metal detected down in Dalton, Georgia for a long time, a few of my friends, Dr. Bill Blackman, Ron Eisman, Mike Patterson, there was actually several camps they got into, and I got fortunate to get in one of them, that you would just find tons of North Carolina buttons, Starburst buttons, just gobs of them. And North Carolina was shipping over uniforms at that time to the Confederate troops that were winter camped in Dalton. And some of these were going to Tennessee troops and other South Carolina troops. So guess what? They didn't want to be associated wearing a uniform that had North Carolina buttons on it because they were from Tennessee or they were from Georgia. So they would cut those new buttons off and sew those old buttons on the uniform.
Oh, that's neat.
And David's very thankful for that.
Yes.
Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Belly up to the bar. That's something I wouldn't know anything about here.
Oh,
God. You're already at it.
Yeah, I didn't quit last night. 2:22 deuces were wild. But, hey, caught parts of your show here. Of course, we'll do a shameless plug right quick for Doc Hollywood's Dynamite Dance Show rising out between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. We play the best of 70s, 80s R&B and disco. We do that thing about once a month now on Saturday nights, and hope that all the listeners tune in there and get your feel for the R&B and the disco there.
Is it tonight?
It is tonight. Tonight.
Well,
John and Ron will come be your dancers for you tonight.
All right.
I charge by the pound.
I'm glad polyester stretches.
Got a good. I got a pair of 6-inch and 8-inch high heel pumps. I'll bring in there for them guys. They can weasel into them there. That's good.
I can't wait.
Hey guys, I don't know if you touched on this or not. You guys remember about 6 or 8 years ago, somebody fired off a Civil War cannon down in the Dockery subdivision area. Do you remember that? And they had ATF, FBI, CIA, about 4 or 5 jurisdictions down there trying to figure out the trajectory of that thing and figure out where the heck it came from. I think it was on July the 4th.
That was probably David's firework display down
Yes, that's what that actually was. That was our annual 4th of July. The police
if there was a cannon fired off, the cook could have been in.
Let me tell you, the annual Cook firework display that David puts on is it's better than any organized fireworks display in Cleveland.
We know where we're taking Avery this year.
Yeah,
that was the cannon.
Yeah, I think that thing's still an unsolved.
And he tried to explain that to the police, but they didn't want to listen. There was no shell fired.
Good story there. But, yeah, Doc Hollywood Dynamite Dance Show rides tonight, 6 to 8 p.m. Good show there, Old Town Cleveland. You guys bring class to the station. Always the best guest as well.
Thank you, Doc. See ya.
See you soon,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Talking about cannonballs, I want to say real quick is one time John and I was at a recording studio and his cell phone rung and John says, "Yeah, it could. Yeah, if there's fuses still in it, they could blow up. Everything, yes. He said, "I'll send Ron to get it." Well, wait a minute now. If this thing can blow up, why are you sending Ron to go get it? I never could figure that out.
I wasn't going to.
Yeah.
Things like that. Actually, a friend of mine, Lawrence Christopher, who is deceased now, he ran a relic shop down in Georgia, and he would drill artillery shells sometime by hand, especially if it was a common shell. But he was actually drilling one time by hand, and then it blew up, and it took a piece of his skull and his upper head off. And that black powder, if water or anything hadn't got into it, it gets very unstable. And a lot of the shells, they would line with sand in case if any water did get in around the fuse, the sand would absorb the moisture. Well, he happened to find one that had the sand in it, but that sand, of course, had hardened and crystallized, and when that hot drill bit hit that sand, it made a spark, and it ignited that shell. So, yeah, anyone that was to ever come across something like that, it's best just to leave it alone and call someone in that really knows what they're doing about it.
Now, up on that ridge you were talking about where the railroad trestle is, David pulled a 9-pound Schinkel shell, and it was fully loaded. Well, it was in.
It
apparently had gone through the trees when it was fired and got turned backwards, and so the fuse didn't hit. It went backwards into the ground, and I mean, when he come off the mountain with it, like everybody else is 100 yards behind him.
But I mean, you can get these professionally defused, so it can be done.
Is yours still alive, or has it been?
Oh no, I had that down.
So don't take your Black and Decker.
No.
No Black and Decker.
No.
Okay.
This is one of those cases that you really need to know what you're doing.
Let's talk about the bridge burners of the area here. Cleveland, Tennessee attempted or did burn the bridge several times, and they arrested how many people, Deb?
Oh, I don't know.
I've heard accounts of anywhere between 6 to 15, so, somewhere's in between 6 and 15.
I think there might have been 15 people involved.
Yeah, only 6
and
got
some
it.
of them on their deathbed when they were 80 admitted it finally.
And there's a lot of them. Some of them went to prison here, Deb?
I don't know.
What's there was one up here, Truett or Tipton or?
I don't know.
You do know.
Well, it depends on who.
I'm not just keeping it a secret from you. I really don't remember.
I think Hurlburt had mentioned some, but to tell you the truth, he was just trying to make some money so he could write a history of the 9th Indiana, and I think he, how could you put it mildly?
Lied.
Maybe lied a little. His stories in there are maybe
not always accurate.
70% accurate and
then embellished.
Made
us look worse. Now the guys in Greene County, your wife's family's from up around Greene County.
Yeah, a lot of her daddy's side.
The bridge burners, they just hung them.
Yeah.
I mean,
hung them on the bridge while it was still smoking.
Yeah,
right.
Sure did.
And here they, I think they put most of them in prison.
Yeah.
And several of them are buried up here in Fort Hill now. And some of them were very prominent people in town that
I can't remember who it was, but one of them orchestrated the burning of one of the bridges, and then because he lived in Charleston or in Calhoun, he was going to burn the Calhoun Bridge himself because he knew how to make a quick escape. But I don't remember who that was. I was thinking it was somebody out of the Shamblin family, but I really don't remember.
We can't figure out how to reenact that, though. We can't put smoking things on the bridge. It might upset the railroad. Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
There's one more thing I'm going to add, and I'm sorry for bothering y'all so much, but I'm going to treasure Debbie's book because Linda's got it right now. She's finished reading it. And I'm going to treasure Debbie's book and then I'm going to hand it down to my youngins, and that is a real good book that Debbie wrote. But I still didn't get my picture.
The one we made there at we'll have to find that somewhere.
I was looking at those the other day.
Deb said she sent it the other day. We'll get it to you. All right. Thanks, Sid.
Ron, you was talking about earlier about families in Bradley County and stuff. A lot of families were put through different types of hardships and stuff. A lot of families in the Blue Springs area and out on the Candies Creek, Ridge Road up and down through there. The Beards, there was an encampment at Beards Bridge, and around it they used the Beards house as a headquarters.
Where was Beards Bridge?
Okay. The old supermarket on Georgetown Road.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of the name of that now.
Calfee's?
Calfee's.
Yes.
If you turn right beside it, where the road goes down and crosses Candies Creek, if you look back to your right, you can see remnants of the older road.
Yes.
That went right there.
Is that near where Johnny Brewer lives now?
Yes.
Right across the street.
Okay,
yeah.
but the Beards, Surgeon, the Confederate troops, used his house as headquarters. The McCrackens, which is one of the few house places I still have not found yet on Candies Creek. So if anyone has any information on that, that would be a helpful.
Someone had asked me about the Beards because after the war, there was a big barbecue at the Beards.
Right.
And I had gotten on that road. I was at the right, so that reassures me that I was telling them the right thing.
Yeah.
And how I did that was looking at the census that who lived where and based it on where. Who owned E.L. Ross's old farm that's on that road? Whose farm was that? While he's thinking, there's still some of the old log buildings there, but that place is well protected.
Now,
Don't think you can go there metal
now,
detecting.
Who owns it now, or who owns
somebody? I want to know who built the log buildings.
Oh.
Is it out of the Ross family?
It had to be one of the Rosses because
so it
I
may
have
been a Green or a Ross.
Yeah, I have a Civil War map of 1863 that has the Ross name on it there.
Okay.
So there was a Ross living there.
Nathaniel.
Probably was it. I think it was Nathaniel Green Ross was his full name, and so he lived there at the time of the Civil War.
They tore down the 1900s house recently, but they did leave the log buildings. But they need to be undercover better.
The troops came through and they ate your food.
Oh, everything.
They killed your cattle.
Burnt your fences.
And then barns to build their own forts and things and firewood. And
yesterday we were at
both sides.
Andrew Johnson's house in Greene County, and they said that when they came in after the war, the doors were missing because the soldiers had made shelters out of them or burned them. The rails were gone off the porch, which is what happened. I mean, they took down entire barns.
Yes.
And they took the porches off the houses. Anything that was portable was burned. And up on the farm there, just north of on Walker Valley Road, just north of Wilson Farm Road, there was massive amounts of troops in there, and there's documentation where Mr. Craig Miles, that was one of his working farms up there, had asked for damages, but he didn't get his damages.
I can imagine.
He was playing both sides against the middle. His brother-in-law was selling stuff to the Union, and he was selling stuff to the Confederates, and when it's all said and done, they said, no, we're not going to pay you for damages.
Well, whether you was a friend of the Confederacy while they were there at that time, or you were a friend of the Union supporter while they were there at that time, it didn't make a whole lot of difference. Sometimes the Confederates would write you out a note, which of course turned out to be worthless. But
some people got paid and some people
they
didn't.
had to do what they had to do to survive. And you talking about that, this is a picture, a part of the 4th Army Corps right here at Blue Springs, just south of the school. And you can see the ridge line where all the trees pretty much are all missing. And that just tells you, and this was taken supposedly just 1 week after the encampment. So they have basically cut 90% or more of all the trees down to use them as fuel. They've built hut sites.
There's reports there that they took in Walker Valley where I was talking about, they took the slabs off the sides of the barn. They took the wood off the barn, I believe, and took it to Charleston and made a ferry out of it.
Yes.
Well, and if you don't see some of the pictures of Chattanooga when Bragg was up on the mountain, there was not a tree in Chattanooga, and
Same thing.
Chattanooga was mud.
Yeah.
That's all it was a big mud place there, and if Bragg had come off that mountain and kicked him, we'd all be speaking Southern today.
Yeah. He needed a cell phone and a good advisor up on the hill somewhere.
Bragg needed replaced.
You're talking about thousands of troops in an area for, like at Blue Springs.
It was like the
2.5. Yeah, for 2.5 months, they devoured everything
and took everything.
Well, yeah, and they were hungry,
Yeah.
And some of them would eat parched corn for a long time. Let me ask you the question, and I don't have the answer yet, and I don't know if you have the answer.
Where's Jimmy Hoffa?
Yeah.
Well, close.
Okay.
Where's the train wreck?
Which one?
The one.
I think that's the
one down in McDonald where there's supposed to be how many troops killed? 27 Confederate soldiers, 17 or 14.
Upward numbers of almost 200.
So
yeah, I have to.
So where was it at? Or where were all the train wrecks at? Or
That
do you
may
know?
still be a mystery 100 years from now.
100 years from now, it will
all
be
I
a mystery.
can say is where I have looked. If you go down Blue Springs Road, turn off like you're going to Blue Springs Baptist Church Road, follow that road on out to where it hits, that would be
Tunnel Hill?
Tunnel Hill Road. Go across Tunnel Hill Road about 3/4 of a mile down that road on the right-hand side. The old railroad track crosses a creek right there. And you're in the Black Fox community as of right there. I found some parts from an old train wreck that was from that time period right there. Found a few scattered bullets out in the field and a couple of buttons. Now, whether that was the train wreck or some soldiers came through there and camped, it's an awful low spot, but over the years, as roads get built up and the railroad track gets built up, what looks like today is a swamp area might have been good ground back then to camp on. So that might be 50% accurate. That's the best I've ever been able to pinpoint what they call the big train wreck in Black Fox.
Now, was there a downgrade?
It was just a slight downgrade. It wasn't very much. The rumor was that the track got tore up there. That the track was supposedly tore up there some by Union troops and or sympathizers, and when the train went across, it derailed. But
in one of the diaries too, somebody says a piece of wood on another wreck. I think it's supposed to be different from that. Down in that same area, maybe on over in what we now know as Hamilton County, a log or a piece of wood came off and derailed.
Yeah.
And of course it was hot, so the guys were riding on top of the box cars, and so that's one of those stories too. But now that's out of somebody's diary,
right?
A civilian diary.
So it's, unless you can get some type of documentation, I've never found anything in the OR books or a soldier's diary that says 2 miles,
right,
such Cleveland West, whatever, that this happened here.
Myra Inman mentions it too.
Deb, at Fort Hill, there's an area up there that's just a green flat area that's supposed to be buried with numerous Confederate soldiers.
Yes.
Do we know anything about those soldiers at all?
No. It was people that died in the hospitals here, and we were one of those places. We were kind of like the first Confederate safe place around, and they would bring people from, help me with
All
some of the
over.
battles. I mean, up in
Missionary Ridge, Chickamauga.
Well, the ones even north of us.
Yes, Knoxville, Sweetwater.
They would bring the wounded here and have no idea who they were. By the time they got here, they couldn't tell people who they were. And so we have buried numerous unknown soldiers up there. I understand.
Unmarked also.
Unmarked. Yes. During the time that the burials were going on, someone was putting wooden crosses up there, which is all they had to work with, and some of those had names on them, but all of that has been lost to time. And so we have a big green field up there that we think that there are numerous, in the hundreds, of Civil War soldiers buried there. I've been told, we always talk about people that you bury people east to west. Well, I've been told by people who have checked the graves up there with different devices that says those are going north and south, which kind of makes me think that they might be from the Civil War. And then when folks died that didn't have funds, once the old Confederate soldiers and their wives, they were buried in there too, and that's been lost to time. Now, there are 2 Union soldiers buried up there with our good Confederate boys, and they are folks that got killed here in Cleveland, and some of the strongest Confederate sympathizers took care of them when they were wounded. And when they died, they just had to bury them where they had a spot, and where they had a spot was up there amongst the Confederate soldiers, and those 2 of those graves happened to be marked.
John, you talking about earlier before we started today about another Confederate monument in Cleveland, or marker.
Oh, it's the one that they've put up down at the corner of Inman and Parker, I guess.
Oh, you're talking about the new monuments.
There's
one at the Cumberland Presbyterian Church in Charleston. Mm-hmm. There's one at the Museum Center. And what's the one at the Museum Center? Is it a kind of a general?
Matter of fact, it gives a little bit of description of the
it's got
of that Harrison Pike battle and some of the generals that were here. And
it's in the parking lot at the Museum Center.
It's on the National Register, so
those
a lot of people don't have a clue. They just pass it by. And don't
well, it's and sort of segue here. Next week on June 28th, we're going to be talking about the monuments at the corner of what we know is Ocoee and 8th Street, there at the Monument Building. There's 2 monuments there. One got knocked down recently, and we understand it's being prepared to be put back. We think so, but there are 2 monuments there. They have nothing to do with each other. They're the stories are interesting, and Debbie Riggs, who wrote a book about the monuments, about the smaller monument that got knocked down, is going to be here and talk about that. And that book's being reprinted and will be available
next Saturday.
Next Saturday be the first time you will get The Day Cleveland Cried is the name of it. It's about the Thaxton train wreck.
We're also going to have Tanya Brantley representing the United Daughters of the Confederacy. I'm 99% sure about that. She's going to be talking about when and how the Confederate monument got put up, and the little bit of fuss and fight that went all the way to court over who was going to put what monument where.
I think it was bigger than a little fuss and fight.
And I hope that we can get Brian Reed to call in and talk about the Grand Army of the Republic monument that's up at Fort Hill. I believe there's only 3 in the state of Tennessee, and we have one here, and probably the 4 people here in this room are 4 people that know about it in Cleveland.
Well, if you go down where the old Coke plant is, just before you get there, you take a ride up the hill. I can't remember the name of the little road that goes up there. But as you enter Fort Hill, if you'll look to the left there, there's a big, just a block granite with a plaque on it, and that is the Grand Army of the Republic.
Before we close out here, I'd just like to add that, I'm a Tennessee boy, born and bred in Bradley County. I tell some people if I had a flagpole in my front yard, it would probably be the Tennessee flag first, the Confederate flag second, the American flag third, and they give me a funny look. I said, that's just kind of my roots. I said, if a war broke out between Tennessee and Georgia, I'm hometown. I would be for Tennessee. And during the Civil War, a lot of Americans, because they were all Americans, and I think sometimes people forget that the Confederates and the Union, and particularly in East Tennessee, brother against brother, family against family, neighbor against neighbor sometimes. When it was all said and done, we were all still Americans.
That's right.
So
I think that sometimes people weren't really on one side or the other, and they were just here, and they were against whoever was occupying their farm at that time and taking all their food and stuff.
You're in their hometown.
And so there were some people, like my great-grandfather out of Murray County, Georgia, that didn't go fight until he, quote, got invaded. And once the Union troops came in there and messed up their farm, he and all the nephews and his brother-in-laws and everyone went to, and they ended up at Vicksburg, where one of them got killed. Well, more than one. There was at least 3 people in the family that got killed, and he was seriously wounded.
And the the good thing is, that Abraham Lincoln had a plan of reconstruction, and there was be no penalties against the Confederate states or the people, and luckily Andrew Johnson continued with his plan. Although there's some move by Congress try to do things
to impeach him.
Yeah, impeach him. Matter of fact, but Andrew Johnson also said he was going to stay with that Reconstruction, and we could have been an occupied territory, and not. Some people didn't want the Confederate states to come back in and be able to vote.
I think the good thing is, when it was over, they said, "Okay, now let's all get along," and they didn't hang the Southern generals in a group. I mean, they could have just hung all the officers, couldn't they?
Sure.
Well, they could have brought them up on,
they could have tried them
war crimes.
War crimes. Now, there were some folks that didn't make it through those first few days, but as a whole, if they had, hung one person, a well-known person, I think that it would have just spread and it would have been chaos again.
Johnny, got any final comments?
Yeah. The dude a while ago sold, I think it sounds like he's already sold his flag. Well, I've got a map of where the Confederate gold's buried that I'll sell for $5,000 today only.
Well, I'll tell you what.
It's normally $100,000, but
give me the thing and I'll give you 10% of all I find.
Well, I don't know about that.
All right.
But you can get my book.
It's the Indian gold that we're really missing.
Right, the big
that
Indian
Cherokee gold is
at
still
$5
missing.
million. You can buy Confederate Voices. You can always catch me here at the radio station on Saturday mornings, or you can go buy the Red Ribbon on Central Avenue, close to Joe Rogers Office Supplies, and they have them there. And we have them online at www.oldtowncleveland.com, along with all of the other stuff that we have put out in the last couple of years.
And John Cook, your CD?
Yes, no preservatives added. You can buy it at www.johncookmusic.net or Amazon. Go to Amazon.
Look for John Cook. Great. You got two songs from the
Dirt Track documentaries on there, and
award-winning documentary.
Award-winning documentary. I wanted to mention too. We went to a showing of Wild River Thursday night at the Museum Center, and we had quite a good crowd there, considering we had a thunderstorm and rain again on a Thursday night. But people have asked me repeatedly where they can buy copies of that, and Amazon. We got our copy at Amazon.
And there's Blu-ray.com, I believe, too, is another place you can get Wild River.
You can buy everything on Amazon.
That's right. Yes. And maybe even a dobro. Hey, I want to say to John and David, thank you for what you've really done to save history around here. Be involved in, David is sort of one of the leading experts around this area. You can ask him that. If you want to read all these dispatches, as David, I think, has read to every 1,400 volumes of them or whatever it is, 127 volumes?
128 volumes total.
And you've read most of them?
Yeah. That's why I need glasses.
Yes. You can now find those online now.
Oh, yeah. You can actually go to Cornell University and pull what my eyes have went through over the last 30 years, pull it up online and enlarge the print, so it's easier to read.
So you actually sit at the history branch and read all 120?
Yes.
That's unique. Thank David. We do appreciate you, and John, good to see you always, and your older brother here, David, like you invited him to come with you, and that's $15 now.
Yeah.
I
folks,
got you covered.
We always say that start saving your history. There's you got to talk to your family members. If you haven't sat down and recorded your dad, your mom, your grandparents, someday they'll be gone, and all those stories are gone and things. I've got a tape from my grandfather laying on my desk at home, and what a treasure to hear his voice again. So do that. Find those old pictures from the shoe boxes and the drawers and pull them out. Get someone in your family to help you to identify who they are, and then share them with people also, because we post pictures on Facebook all the time. You'd be surprised what some little store or some man or some woman brings back memories of the history in this area. It's up to you. So, Dave, are you ready?
What am I doing?
You will always remember about Pearl Harbor.
But will you remember Aunt Pearl?
There you go. We'll see you next week here. We're going to be talking about the monuments here in Cleveland and the controversy that those two monuments created. So we'll be here next week on Old Town Cleveland.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. Whoop FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Where'd the old town go? They moved it all north of here in a shopping mall.
You need money overnight? Check into cash. Your time is tight. .com. Bank account.